Hey guys, Hayden here again from Alarm System Store, and today we're going to do our wired to wireless translator installation style video. This is for the Qolsys IQ panels. This module here is the PG9WLSHW8, and it is the small cabinet PowerG wired to wireless translator. And what I have here is an IQ Panel 4. It's a 319 version, I believe, but because it's a 4, it's got both the PowerG and the 319. I also got a hardwired keypad that we're going to be hooking up to this, as well as a zone expander that we're going to plug into this, and we'll stick it in the cabinet. But essentially, just want to show you guys how this thing is programmed, so I'll get the camera moved over here so you guys can see what I'm doing, and we'll get started. All right, so here we are. I have the IQ panel. It's all powered up and ready to go. There's no zones on it or anything. It's basically just a completely blank panel. And all I'm gonna be doing is showing how the installation for this goes, as well as programming it into the system. So first thing we need to do with the translator. This comes with a power supply. That is this right here. This is going to be connected to your AC outlet, and then you will need a little bit of 18 gauge wire to run from the power supply into the board there. So I'm going to go ahead and get that hooked up. One thing to keep in mind while you're doing this, if you are doing it, the power supply over there is actually a power converter as well as a transformer. So it converts the AC power into DC. So on the main board of our system here, polarity does matter. Usually with alarm systems, polarity on the AC is not a big concern, but with this module, it is very important that you get your positive wire into the positive terminal and the negative into the negative. All right, so I got this hooked up. It does have power. If you'll watch, this LED right here is flashing every now and then to let you know it is powered up. But to get it enrolled, all we're gonna do is go over to the IQ panel, go into our settings, and then go into our advanced settings. I'm just gonna use the installer code, which is default 1111. And then you'll pop up with the menu selection of items, and we're gonna click on installation, devices, security sensors, and then auto learn. So this module itself actually has an enroll button that you hold down. It's right here above that flashing LED. So I'm going to hold that down for a few seconds. The LED is going to turn yellow, and then you let go of the button. So hold that down. There we go. As you heard, the device connected. So you do want to check your serial number just to make sure that, you know, nobody else is enrolling one of these somewhere in proximity. But once you've checked it out and the serial number looks good, just click OK. And then it's going to give you the chance to basically set up this module. There isn't a whole lot you can really change here. Under sensor group, it's shown as a takeover because it is a takeover module. It's taking over hardwired sensors. The bell output is normal. You can change that to external. That would be for like European power setups or whatever the case may be. But other than that, the only real thing you can do is name it. So up here in the top right, you can click IQ Hardwire. You can rename it whatever you want, and that way, whenever it pops up on the panel, if there's an issue, you'll know exactly what it's talking about. Under the chime type and the voice prompts, I believe you can turn them on, but the device itself doesn't do anything that relates to chime or the voice prompts. That would actually be connected to the zones themselves, so there's no point in turning them on. But once you're done, just click Add New. And what it will do is it will add the translator. It'll add the translator as a module or as a sensor, and then it'll also pop up with the 8 zones that come on this board.
Hardwire input 1 slot to open.
So it's going to go through all the open zones. Give me 1 sec. Okay, so essentially what you heard it doing was it was going through and telling you that all of the zones are open. So if you're using this module, it is a good idea to have everything hooked up prior to enrolling it. I mean, you can do it this way if you want, it really doesn't matter. But it does go through and it'll tell you every single open zone every time you enroll, like the translator. If you enroll a zone expander, it gives you 8 zones per board, essentially, and each time it's going to go through and it's going to name all of those zones and tell you that they're open. So to avoid that, just hook up your zones first, and then whenever you connect it, it will only tell you the ones that are having some sort of trouble. So from here, as we can see on this screen, basically at the top, it is showing the hardwired translator. So it does count as a zone on the panel, but then below that, you'll see the same serial number or the same ID number for this device, but it'll show you the type of sensor that is connected, and then it'll show the IQ Hardwire input 1 slot 2. So the input number is actually the zone number for this device, and the slot number is the zone that it's taking up. So the IQ Hardwire is zone 1, the zone 1 on here is zone 2, so on and so forth. It's slightly confusing, but once you've seen it, you'll be plenty used to it. But essentially, now that we have all of these added, we can go back a page. And then if we go to Edit Sensor, we can go in and actually select what each of these zones are going to be. So like I said, we're going to start with zone 1. So it'll be IQ Hardwire input 1 slot 2. This is going to be for zone 1 on this device. So we click the pencil here, and then it'll ask you hardwire input, which is 1, and then it'll ask if it is a door window, a motion, a glass break, key fob, auxiliary pendant, smoke detector, CO detector, heat, water, shock, whatever you got. So there are plenty of options, and as far as hardwired sensors go, there are a lot of them out there, so select what is the closest to what you're working with. But moving on from there, select the sensor type that is connected to that zone, and then under sensor group, each time you change the sensor type, it will give you a different selection of sensor groups. So right now it's under door and window. So under sensor group, we have entry exit normal delay, entry exit long delay, perimeter, which would be instant, instant interior. And then if we change this to a motion real quick, it'll give you a whole new selection of sensor groups. So if you're unfamiliar with the IQ panel and you're kind of checking this out for the first time, just know that all of these sensor groups basically determine how the zone operates. So whichever one of these you choose, match it up to what it says in the manual, and that will tell you exactly what is going to happen, when that sensor is going to be active, when it's going to be triggered, so on and so forth. So you go through there, select your sensor type, and then set your sensor group. And that'll tell the translator what it needs to do anytime that sensor is triggered on your panel. Now, input mode down here, this is for resistor usage. So if you're familiar with a hardwired system, this device does come with a pack of resistors, as well as a battery cable there that you'll connect to a battery you can put right here. But if you plan to use resistors, they're in here. They are the 5.6K, that the same as the DSC NEO uses. But essentially, once you have your zones hooked up, either put resistors on them on the wire runs at the end of the line, or do not. If you have resistors, leave this set as end of line. You can select from normally closed, normally open, and double end of line if you wish. So you can set it up however you want, just the same as a hardwired panel. It's just going to, every time you do that with a zone, whatever type of circuit you have, you do have to come in here and you have to set it for each zone. Now, once you've set those things, that actually, like I said, tells the system how the zone is going to operate. From there, we can come over to sensor name, and instead of having IQ Hardwire input 1 slot 2, we can change that to front door or entry room motion, whatever you want it to be. You can toggle on the chime so that anytime that door is open, it chimes on the panel. You can turn voice prompts on so it'll read that name that you type in there. And then under source, it'll only ever give you the PowerG option when you're working with this, but that basically just means that it is using a PowerG connection to talk to the translator. So pretty straightforward there. But every time you complete a zone, make sure you save it, so hit the save button.
Sensor updated successfully.
It'll tell you the sensor is updated successfully. Now, anytime you're working with one of these, like I was saying before, have all your zones hooked up already and have things as ready as you can to go so that you can just go down through these, knock out every single one of the zones, and then you can back out of programming and then you can check to see if they're working properly. All right, so now that I've kind of covered the basics of the device itself, there's plenty more we can do with it, which I'll show you in a minute. But essentially next, I'm going to connect the keypad and the zone expander that I have. So I'm gonna power this device down, I'm gonna wire these up, and then I'm gonna reboot it, and then I'll be back once things are ready to go. Okay, so I just got everything wired up, and I am rebooting the translator here. And for our zone expander, I'm gonna go ahead and slide this down into one of these slots. So on here, if you saw my previous video about these translators, right here on the side is where the zone expanders go for the small cabinet. You can get one over here and then one on this side as well. Basically, they just slide down like that. You can still access the screws from this side, and you'll have access to the wiring as well, and it'll be out of the way of the battery. Now, I'm using way too much wire here, so we'll just kind of try and tuck it over there a little bit. I also have a keypad enrolled. Fortunately, I don't have a whole lot of space here. Maybe I can stick it like right here. All right, perfect. So, all right, now, as you can see, this keypad does say keypad not enrolled, and that's because even though it's connected to the translator, the IQ panel does not know that it exists yet. So what we're gonna have to do is go into the programming on our IQ panel and set up the keypad as well as the additional zone expander. So the way that you learn these sensors in, if you're adding them after you've enrolled the translator, is by actually adding the serial number and allowing the panel to pick up the zones from here as well as the keypad itself. So to do that, we will need to be in the installation menu on that same page where we clicked auto learn earlier, but we're going to go to add sensor now. So right here under sensor DLID, that is actually referring to this module because we're telling the IQ panel that it needs to talk to the translator so that it can pick up a new sensor, essentially. So I'm going to type that in. It's 460-3416. And then under hardwired input, we're going to click core bus. And that is because we are connecting a new module which is connected to the core bus of this translator. And then underneath that, it'll ask the module type. So you can choose from keypad, zone expander, or power supply. As I mentioned in my other video, these translators are capable of holding up to 4 DSC NEO, LCD, or Icon keypads. You can have 4 of the HSM2108 zone expanders, and then you can have 1 HSM2300 power supply. So whatever type of module that you're planning to set up, go ahead and select it there. We're going to do the keypad first. Now right here, it asks for the sensor ESN. So we need the serial number of this keypad, and we're going to plug it into there. So give me 1 second. All right, so I got the serial number plugged in there. And then underneath, it's going to ask for the sensor type and the sensor group. Under sensor type, it's just going to be keypad, obviously. Under the group, there are options to choose from. Essentially, I just leave it always at fixed intrusion because it is going to be a fixed keypad. It's not going to move. It's just a intrusion keypad, so you can arm and disarm the system with it. So after that, you're welcome to enable the keypad tamper if you wish, which is located on the back cover of the device. Some of them have tampers that you screw to the wall, so when it's ripped off, it sets the tamper alarm off. And then some of them have like a little rubber contact button that just needs to be depressed while it's mounted. So the same thing applies. If it gets torn off, it triggers the tamper. You can decide whether the backlight's going to be on at all times or off. You can give it a name, so you can name it, if you have multiple of these, you can name it, you know, shed keypad, garage keypad, whatever the case might be. And that way, if this keypad in particular has some sort of issue, it will tell you exactly what keypad the translator's talking about when you see the trouble. Chime type and voice prompts, you can leave those on. chime's not going to do anything. This doesn't trigger any chime. The voice prompt doesn't do anything, although I do believe if you arm and disarm with this, that's what triggers the voice prompt on the IQ panel to say system disarmed, blah, 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 whatever it says. So you can leave that exactly as it is. And then once you're ready, just click Add New.
Sensor added successfully.
So right there, you saw the keypad beep, beep, beep. It picked up the keypad, and now it does say system is ready to arm. But we do have a trouble condition, which we're going to go over in a few minutes. There's a couple things that you do need to do on this translator as well. But essentially, now that we have the keypad enrolled, we can set that off to the side because we know it's good. And next, we're going to be working on the expander here. So we basically need to add a new sensor again. We're going to type in the ID number of the translator. We're going to select core bus, and then under module type, we're going to select zone expander. And then under the sensor ESN, we will have to pull this zone expander back out to get the serial number. And it is usually on these little stickers that kind of look like a QR code thing. So we're going to type in that. All right. Go ahead and put this back in here real quick. And then we're going to go down to sensor type, hardwired translator. So it is basically, it's translating more hardwired zones. Sensor group's going to be takeover because it is taking over hardwired zones. And then again, you can name it if you want. We'll name it EXP1 for expander 1.
Sensor
Click
added
Add New.
successfully.
And then this is the one that I have actually had some trouble with in the past. Basically, sometimes the keypad or the IQ panel doesn't want to pick up the additional zones from this zone expander. So that's kind of what happened here. You can see right here that the zone expander is enrolled. However, it has yet to pick up the zones for the expander. So you're welcome to try it this way, or there is another method of enrolling a zone expander, and that is simply, well, we'll have to delete the expander in here now. So we'll delete that out of here. And then we'll go back, and then you just click on auto learn, and then you let it sit for a few minutes. Sometimes
Zone
All right, so as you heard, sometimes it is really quick at picking up those additional zone expanders, sometimes it is not. I've had one sit, it sat for over a minute before it picked them up. So I know a minute's not very long, but in terms of, auto learning from a, all wireless device, that can seem like a long time when you're just sitting here staring at it. But like I said, just click on that auto learn and just let it sit for a minute. The IQ panel will definitely let you know when it's done, as you heard. So, and now that we have that, we basically can scroll down past all of the initial zones that we had, and you can see we have our keypad here listed, and then we have the zone expander listed, and then we have all of the 8 zones that expander adds. So now, if we go back and we go to Edit Sensor, we can edit all of the zones on the zone expander. The same exact programming is done for each one that I showed a few minutes ago, where you select the type of sensor it is, the sensor group, and then you can give it a name. So that's the basics of how to enroll modules for this device. I am going to cover a couple more things real quick. There are some troubles that will show up when you're using these devices that aren't explicitly explained through the IQ panel, so it might be a little confusing the first time you see it, but essentially this system, or the translator, acts as a DSC NEO system. So a lot of the same rules apply on this as they do on the DSC NEO, such as the bell circuit is supervised. So the bell circuit, if you don't have a siren hooked up to it, or if you don't have a resistor hooked up to it, it will present a trouble condition. The same thing goes for zone expanders. There is a jumper wire that you have to place between the black and the tamper terminal on these zone expanders, and that tells the system that the zone expander is not tampered. Now, if those things aren't done, then you will get a trouble condition on the translator. So if we back out real quick, as you can see, it does have a list of all of our open zones, but if we scroll down, this little, looks like a broken cracker, but this little broken cracker symbol basically means there is a trouble condition on that module. So it's telling us that the IQ hardwire has a trouble, and then the zone expander is also showing a trouble for this as well. And now what those mean is that they are tampered. So this one, the zone expander, if we do that little jumper wire that I was talking about, it'll clear that up. And then on the translator, in addition to having to have the bell circuit have a resistor on it, you also need to put the cover on the device. As you can see here, there's a little, one of those contact pads that I mentioned earlier. This is actually the tamper for the translator itself. So I'm gonna have to tuck these wires in here. But basically, unless this cover is on, it is going to show a trouble condition. So if we put that on there, now you can see that the IQ hardwire changed from the broken cracker tamper condition to an exclamation point with a diamond around it. If you see the exclamation point with a diamond around it, that means that the bell circuit is still supervised, but it does not have anything to supervise. So this is where you need to put the resistor in on that bell circuit. Let me get this back open real quick. All right, so as you saw when I took the cover back off, it gave us our broken cracker back. Those are the main troubles that I've seen on this device. There can be other troubles, obviously. I mean, you could have tampers on any of your sensors. Like, let's say you have a motion that has a built-in tamper. You could get that broken cracker on your living room motion or whatever the case may be. So these symbols right here under the, this is the main screen of the IQ panel, but on the right here, it always gives you a list of your active sensors. So if you're ever looking through here and under active, you see this little broken chain link, that means the zone is open. If you see the broken cracker, that means it is a tamper condition. And if you see that exclamation point with the diamond around it, that is specific to the translator, by the way, but that is talking about the bell circuit on the translator. There is a little guide that is in the user manual that comes with the IQ panel that tells you what most of the symbols mean. The only one that's not explained that I'm aware of is that exclamation point with the diamond, because that is specific to this translator. Outside of that, this module is pretty straightforward. This does apply to both the PG9WLSHW8, which is this module here, as well as the PG9HRDW8, which is the same thing, it just has a larger cabinet. So if you need space for like 4 zone expanders, for example, you can get the Hardwire 8, and that gives you a larger cabinet. It comes with 4 slots for zone expanders, as well as the 7-amp battery, and then you can have everything combined into one cabinet. So real quick before I go, I do want to cover how to set up the PGMs on this translator. So it is a little awkward compared to doing it on the DSC NEO, because you're doing it on an IQ panel, obviously. So once you have the device enrolled, it automatically enrolls those 4 PGMs as well. So we're going to go into the advanced settings, use your installer code, installation, devices, security sensors, and then instead of edit sensor or any of those options, we're going to click on PGM output rules. So right here, it lists them out. PGM1, IQ hardwire, PGM2, IQ hardwire, and then it'll tell you if they're assigned. Basically, the only thing assigning them does is gives them rules. So once we get in here, you can put a name in there for it. You can choose the output type, whether it's normal or inverted. You can choose whether it's a latched or timed action. And then under trigger type, you can select a few different options: system, zone, command, or 2-wire smoke. And that is talking about the action that's going to trigger the PGM. And whichever one you choose, it gives you different options. So if you're doing 2-wire smokes, you just click 2-wire smoke. It already knows what to do for 2-wire smokes, so you don't have to do that. You don't have to do anything else. But if we choose like system, for example, let's say we wanted to turn on a light whenever we arm the system. So you could set it to, if I arm stay, that light comes on. If I wanted to turn on the light when I disarm the system, change it to disarm. That's what triggers the actual PGM to turn on or perform the action that you have it hooked up to. So outside of that, PGMs are fairly simple on here. It does just, like I said, it is just awkward compared to what people might be used to if they're used to using a DSC system or any other type of system that has programmable outputs. The same principles apply. You're basically just telling the system what's going to trigger it and then what it's going to do whenever it's triggered. Now, real quick, the only other thing I want to show is what you can do with the Hardwire keypads when you are using a translator. All right, so on these keypads, as I've mentioned many times in my videos about this, these modules, these wired keypads can't do a whole lot. You can't program with them. You can't really change anything about the main system using this little keypad. However, you are able to scroll through open zones. So as you can see there, all of our zones are scrolling through just like they would on a DSC NEO system. It'll tell you if the system is ready to arm or not. It'll tell you whether or not you have a trouble condition. So you can use the *2 menu if you want. If you click *2, it'll tell you about your device faults, your device battery, tampers, things like that. But one thing that is different in comparison to using this on a NEO, it has a press * to acknowledge button. Basically all that does is it acknowledges the troubles, or it's you telling the system that you acknowledge them, and it will basically quit beeping at you for a period of time until another trouble comes up or whatever prompts the system to go through and recheck for troubles. So that is one kind of nice feature. Generally with trouble conditions, I always recommend just taking care of them as quickly as you can, because otherwise you will run into your keypads beeping at you a lot, and that's annoying. So the only other thing you can do on these keypads is you can go into the *6 menu. Now the *6 menu, it does show pretty much the same exact options as far as like what the NEO shows, but a lot of these aren't going to work. Like late to open, if you hit star on that, it'll tell you function not available. So I do know a couple of these work. I know you can come in here and you can change the brightness control for the keypad. You can change the contrast control and the buzzer control for how loud the keypad is. But that's pretty much it. Anything related to the keypad is fine, but anything that would be specific to the NEO, like the event buffer, the time and date, all that stuff, it will basically just tell you function not available. So they are very, very limited, but they are really handy for additional keypads for arming and disarming, because these LCD keypads are a lot cheaper than getting an additional touchscreen for the IQ panel. However, if you want to be able to use most of the functionality, I do recommend going with the IQ Remote, which is the touchscreen additional keypads for the IQ panel. These are strictly just for having a place to arm and disarm your system. So that's pretty much it. That's everything that this module can handle. As I mentioned, you can have 4 keypads on here, you can have 4 zone expanders, and then you can have 1 power supply. Now, the power supply I didn't enroll because it doesn't really do anything. It just provides additional power to extra devices, like more zone expanders, or more keypads. If you're trying to use all 4 keypads on this module, you'll probably need the power supply. However, there's no programming for it. You can name it, you can select those initial like zone options, but basically all it's doing is it's there to provide power to those extra devices. So that's why I didn't enroll one, because you can't really do anything with it. But outside of that, that covers everything that this module does. It's super handy for taking over existing hardwired systems with an IQ panel, or if you're just the type of person that likes hardwired stuff, you can use this and wirelessly transmit it using PowerG to your IQ panel. That would be the only wireless connection that you would have to worry about in that scenario. Outside of that though, that's where I'm going to call it on this video. Hopefully that was informative, and for those of you that may have struggled along the way getting this enrolled, like I said, occasionally you will run into troubles like trying to enroll the devices the way that it says in the manual, typing in the serial numbers. If you don't get them exactly right, or sometimes even if you do get them exactly right, it just doesn't want to pick them up for whatever reason. That might be a firmware compatibility thing. Both of these, I know the IQ panel is updated to its latest firmware. I'm not sure the firmware on this particular translator, But anyway, if there are, especially on like a IQ 2+ system, if you happen to be using one of these modules because they are compatible, you'll probably have to use the auto enroll method that I showed, where you connect the extra devices like the zone expanders, and then you go into auto learn and let it pick them up on its own. That's the only tricky part that I've ever run into whatsoever. Outside of that, it's all pretty straightforward. But anyway, that's where I'm going to call it. So if you guys are on YouTube, please give a like and subscribe if you want to see more of our content. If you're on our website, hopefully you're finding what you want. All right, I will catch you guys on the next one.